flag in the air.
And he's going to house it.
It's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to the final quick six of the NFL season. That is Brian Twining. I am Kyle Robert. We are here to talk the big game, Super Bowl, the lines, the over-unders, and all the props. Propapalooza is upon us. Brian and I have far too many on our card, and I'm sure it'll only expand as the podcast rolls along. But before we get into all that, Brian, how the hell are you?
I'm fantastic, man. We were just talking prior to jumping on here. Like, it's just the beginning of our Super Bowl card building. And come Sunday, just a hit, we're recording this on Wednesday evening, so we have a few days before the Super Bowl comes. By kickoff on Sunday afternoon, I will be heavily invested into this game with numerous ill-advised wagers just to make it more fun from a fan's perspective.
100%. And obviously we're talking about the Eagles, 1.5 point favorites, depending on where you look, versus the Chiefs, over under of 51. We got Patrick Mahomes as an underdog in the Super Bowl. Love to see that. I guess, Brian, overall thoughts, initial leans, where does your head go when we talk about kind of the big picture of the game?
Well, I mean, we were also talking, like, if you remove the quarterbacks from this game, it's quite clear who has the better overall roster, just in terms of like what they were able to do on the field statistically and just from the eye test. And, you know, it's got to be Philadelphia. They got studs at wide receiver, stud tight ends. They got probably the better backfield in terms of name recognition, but I will say Kansas City's guys are coming on strong. But
we got Lane Johnson out here playing on a torn groin, and he was impressive. Obviously, the Niners, you know, we didn't get to really talk about the monstrosity that was that game.
That was disgusting.
But you know, when your quarterback can't play, it's hard to do some stuff. And you know, I'm gonna be a Nick Bosa apologist, as they are clearly doing things to keep Jalen Hurts in the pocket, and it worked for a while. And if they had some sort of offense, maybe that plays out a little differently. But offensive line is really impressive. Obviously, the defense can get after it, and having value, especially like their secondary, is really key. It's nice to be able to have a rookie quarterback salary for building the rest of your team out. Once you have to pay that quarterback, it's really hard to kind of build the rest of the squad. But really interesting spot. Obviously, I'm trying to figure out. So I think the two biggest things defensively that the Eagles do is obviously get after the quarterback. So the Chiefs' offensive line is going to have to be good, and their secondary is really good. That being said, Mahomes, quick passing, short passing, hopefully not standing back there very long. And, you know, I don't know what we're going to get from the pass catchers. Like, is MVS fine? Is Juju fine? Is Kadarius Toney about ready to be Super Bowl MVP? These are the questions people are asking. But like among, like, if you think like of what the Eagles secondary can be, you think, oh, I want to have them face against an awesome receiving core. I want them to go, you know, they would be a great matchup for the Bengals, who have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. But like Juju and Kadarius Toney and MVS and Justin Watson, like that's who we're defending. So does that sort of mitigate one of the strengths for the Eagles, or does it just make the Chiefs have a rough uphill climb?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting angle for this game, because when you look at Kansas City's offenses, it's a bit of an amoeba in regards to how they utilize their wide receivers, where they're going with the ball here. Like, it's clear this season, outside of Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes is unafraid to throw it to any of his guys. And when you're talking about in terms of offensive scheme, it's Andy Reid having almost 2 weeks to prepare for a game. Doesn't matter how good your defense is. Like, this guy is quite possibly the greatest offensive minds that we've had, you know, since Don Coryell of the Chargers, you know, in OG days. Like, the Eagles defense is, as you said, set up perfectly to deal with an offense like Cincinnati, where those guys have defined roles. So Philadelphia can set up their defense. They could one-on-one with T. Higgins and, put a safety over top Jamar Chase. But you can't do that with Kansas City because you don't know where Mahomes is going with the ball. And it doesn't matter if they put their best defender on Travis Kelce. They will find ways to get him the rock over the middle of the field, running him on wheel routes, running him at quick screens. Like, this is going to be the ultimate chess match.
Yep. And then the other thing is, Jerick McKinnon is obviously lauded as one of the he's Mahomes' pass blocker. Like, he is the guy that he loves to have him out there. But this is a guy that's just not involved. He either, I don't know if he's hurt or if he's sick or some combination, but he's not on the field, especially the last 2 weeks. So that's a little concerning. I'm curious to see, obviously, Isaiah Pacheco. And then the newly activated Clyde Edwards-Helaire. We'll see if he it's either him or Rojo, and I'm guessing based on skill set and what they need, what they will need on Sunday. It'll probably be CEH who is active. And as we get into our betting cards later, you might rehear that name, but I think that's the most important. And then obviously on the other side, the Eagles' offensive line is really strong. Frank Clark is good. Chandler Jones can get to the quarterback, or not Chandler Jones.
Chris Jones.
Chris Jones. There we go. Thank you.
George Karlaftis,
Big
Ten from Purdue. Yeah.
And then obviously I like some of their pieces in the secondary, but the Chiefs secondary has had their struggles. AJ Brown and Devontae Smith are not the people, in Dallas Goedert as well, are not the people you want to be seeing streaking through your secondary, but if the Chiefs can put a little pressure on old Jalen, and more importantly, slow the running game, because so much of what
exactly
the Eagles do well is based on that. And obviously they've shown the ability when the running game isn't there just to come out and chuck it. And that's worked in the past. But this is a huge spot against a really good team. I'm really curious to see. So I guess just from an overall perspective, Brian, before we dive into the props, who you got winning and kind of what are you thinking score wise? Are we, we got an over under 51. Obviously people love points and they love to think that the Super Bowl is going to be an explosion of offenses, but it's not always that case. So I guess where are you at with the spread? Where are you at with the total?
Oh, well, I mean, this is probably me falling into a trap like many other people are going to come Sunday, but getting points, being plus money on the money line he's taking over the mantle as the best quarterback in the NFL from Tom Brady over the last couple of years. I'd want to say Patrick Mahomes, I can't bet against him in this spot, especially getting points. It's the revenge game for Andy Reid against his former squad. And then, with that, like we were talking prior to recording as well, and I was mentioning, like, I don't think Kansas City could afford to score quickly, as kind of opposite of what you would think they would want to do here, because they cannot allow Philadelphia to have 60% of the time of possession in this game, because that means that their defense is just going to be completely worn out come the fourth quarter. And that's what Philly wants to do to you. They want to lean on you, hit big plays, but it really will be a situation, I think, where Kansas City puts the onus on Jalen Hurts' arm in this spot, which he's more than capable of doing. We've seen it this season. But in a big-time situation, if you can eliminate their ability to do that stupid muddle huddle crap at the goal line and just push Jalen Hurts into the end zone, which is like 1950s football, I think it'll be really tough for this game to get the over if that is the case. So I lean Chiefs money line and the under with that.
Took the words right out of my mouth. I love Mahomes getting points. I love Mahomes with all that Super Bowl experience. Obviously, didn't go well against Tampa, but he's back. He's ready to do it again. They've obviously configured the team without Tyreek Hill, and I think kind of for the longevity of Mahomes' career, I think this is going to be a good move. It's not run around in the in the backfield for a couple seconds, try not to get murdered and chuck it down the field. There's a lot of different pieces that are moving, and it'll require someone to step up. Maybe that's Kadarius Toney. Maybe that's someone else. But I love the Eagles. I love AJ Brown. Jalen Hurts, I still have my MVP ticket. Fingers crossed that we get to cash that. Pretty wild that the top two options for the MVP are facing off in the Super Bowl. That's pretty insane. But I think the Chiefs do it, and I'm with you on the under. I think that's so much. If this was like 48, even 49, I might not be as optimistic. But the fact that it's over 50,
yeah, exactly.
I think it's going to be close. I think 46, 47, 48 points is going to be scored, but that's going to keep us under. And I think that is the play from the set. We're going to jump into some props and go through some of our favorite ones. And then at the end, Brian and I will give you our 3 favorite prop or gameplays or sides or whatever. But something to think about before we jump in is, how do you envision this game playing out? Do you think the Eagles route? Do you think the Chiefs route? Do you think it's really close? Do you think, it is the 37-34 that is being reported on Twitter? Don't bet that 81. It's not happening. It's not scripted. It's not happening. But how do you envision the game playing out, and then make your prop plays accordingly? So with that being said, Brian, let's talk some first and or anytime touchdowns. And I'm going to share my screen here, and we can run through some of the big names. And then obviously, as you see people that you think is interesting, go into it. I think Jalen Hurts, like some books have it at minus money, but if you can get Hurts at plus money, just feels like a solid bet. He's been doing it each and every week, as Brian mentioned.
So annoying.
You get in that muddle huddle, and you just kind of push him, and he falls in. Don't love a lot of this, like AJ Brown at barely over plus, even money.
Yeah, that's far too short for me.
Dallas Goedert at plus 175, I think, is the first name that I'm sort of interested in, and even then, don't love it at that price. FTN does have a nice prop shop that you can take advantage of if you want to shop it a little bit. If you have multiple options, it is a nice bet. The first bet I'm going to make is Kadarius Toney at plus 370, Brian. I think he makes a ton of sense. FanDuel is offering some really nice numbers, so I appreciate that. Almost had the touchdown last week.
Yep, and I actually was on him for the AFC Championship game with the first touchdown. So
yeah, I guess it was 2 weeks ago, right?
One of the people sweating the review there.
Yep. So I have him for first touchdown at plus 370, and I have him for anytime touchdown at plus 370, and I have him for first touchdown at 22-1. I feel like with Mecole out again this week, they're going to need someone to step up. Obviously, he has the deep ball skills. He also has the skills in the short to intermediate range. I think there's a few different ways he gets involved. Maybe it's an end around. Maybe it's, a tunnel screen, something. Big play, touchdown. So 22-1 FanDuel for the first touchdown, and then plus 370 at FanDuel. Anything above 3-1, I'm good with on any time. For the first touchdown, I probably want 20-1 or better, but again, shop it, find your best number, find your best value if you want to get on board. Brian, I know we're going to talk Patrick Mahomes. I know he's on your card. Anytime touchdown, 4-1, 5-1. That feels like a nice number.
Yeah, Mahomes is somebody who I mentioned this last week against Cincinnati. I mean, we obviously didn't get to see it. He was a little bit more mobile than I'm expecting him to be with, an extra 12, 13 days of recovery time here. I don't think he's going to be limited that much. And this is a guy who has scored at least one rushing touchdown in every single playoffs run that he's had since taking over as starter for the Chiefs. As we talked about, Philadelphia likes to pressure the quarterback. So I think if they're in a situation inside the 5, you're going to see Philly try to blitz. That leaves open plenty of rushing lanes up the middle, him to, scramble out to his right, or even I keep calling for this. A naked boot to the weak side with Patrick Mahomes on a heavy heavy play fake is probably going to catch somebody up by surprise here. I think there's a good chance that this happens this week. And it's a Super Bowl, man. Weird shit happens. Andy Reid could, script up some weird play where he pitches the ball to Pacheco and he throws the
you could run the Philly special against Philly.
Yeah, like the number is too good to not bet it for a guy who has a history of scoring in the playoffs, in these big games like this. And Mahomes is the guy for the Chiefs that I would want the ball in his hands at any situation near the goal line.
Yep, and he's 28-1 over at BetMGM. That is on the card for the first touchdown.
That is also
I'm with
on
you.
my
I
card.
think
Just
this is
the number's too big.
I think his ankle is going to be the best shape it's been. I think there's potential that they get down by the goal line, run some sort of fake dive, maybe have Travis Kelce come across. He boots out the back, walks into the end zone, because they're all focused on
exactly
on everything else. Interesting numbers on I like the defensive touchdown. I seem to always kind of fall into that, but 7.5 to 1.
They're getting short now.
I think both these defenses are incredibly talented, have big playmakers, and have quarterbacks that are happy to and playmakers that are happy to make dumb decisions. So I think that makes sense. Noah Gray at 8 to 1. I'm gonna actually add that too. He's somebody that is just on the field a lot, and we talked about some of the expectations, some of the impacts. A lot. Maybe it's a Travis Kelce fake. All of a sudden, Noah Gray's going out the back. Maybe it's they're setting up to run, and it's a quick pop pass over the top. I don't know, but 8 to 1 for a guy who's on the field as much as he is seems like a nice bet.
Yeah, and then I'll piggyback off of that, going with another Chiefs guy here. I think Sky Moore, who saw, season high in snap percentage last week in the most important game he's played with the injuries to Mecole Hardman and then Juju also being banged up. He saw a couple of kick returns in that game. He returned a punt. So I do think that this is a situation where Kansas City cannot afford to have Pacheco returning kickoffs anymore. So that leaves open the possibility of a kickoff return by Sky Moore. And again, with the injuries at wide receiver and them not elevating another wide receiver, except they actually activated another guy you're going to hear Kyle talk about in CEH. So I think that limits the wide receivers and where the target's going to be going here. So I think Sky Moore, somebody in the mold of like a Kadarius Toney who could take those short passes and do something by making a guy miss, could also find the end zone. And at 9 to 1, if you can find that 10 to 1, maybe, I think that's a great play.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 10 to 1, anytime touchdown. He is going to be the passing down back. I have a feeling this week. I think McKinnon's still banged up. Obviously hasn't been playing and I know Pacheco filled in nicely a week ago, but I think they want somebody, and we've seen the Chiefs be willing. Obviously, CH, he's not the guy that we kind of expected with the first round pick and all that stuff. But he could still score a touchdown in this spot. He could still be the passing down work. He could still be involved. So I have CH 46 to 1 for a first touchdown.
That's incredible.
Which is absurd. And 10 to 1 for any time. So, for the sports books really smushing these numbers and making them not fun to bet, this is fun to bet. So, it's a lottery ticket. Obviously, the odds of it happening is not super duper high.
Yeah, but I was just going to say too, like especially in the Super Bowl, because it is the biggest standalone game that we have all season. There's only 2 teams playing, so that leaves 30 fan bases out in the cold. If you want to make this game entertaining, like take a shot, do a small unit play, even a quarter unit, a tenth of a unit on somebody like that, pepper the board of these guys, so you could really cheer for some weird name to find the end zone, like a Jack Stoll
23 to 1. We talked about a few different things. We talked about the muddle huddle. He comes in and they do a play action, and all of a sudden Jack Stoll's sneaking out the back. Jalen Hurts right over the top, 23 to 1. I think it's a good bet. Don't put your life savings on it.
No.
But $10 wins you $230. Like that's fun.
And and also too, depending on where you go, I don't know. Some people go to their local, barbershop in the back. Like Lane Johnson or some weird tackle is like they're 100 to 1 on an anytime touchdown. Bet $1. Why not?
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. Any other first or anytime touchdowns that you want to hit?
I mean, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about Travis Kelce. The number is extremely short, but I mean, when you're looking at who Mahomes is going to go to, more than likely near the end zone, it's probably Kelce. So it's hard to get on him for an anytime, but he's a person who the odds are more in favor of you betting him on multiple touchdown scores than just the single, because I mean, you're having to lay more than you're going to get when everybody else is plus money.
Yeah, and if you want to, like, obviously he makes a good like piece in a same game parlay. Like, you can bet him and Hurts to score, and it's $10 wins you $27. So what's that, like plus 270 basically, plus 275. So that's an interesting way to attack it too. Or if you really like a rushing prop or a passing prop, you can. It's a nice piece to tack on to a single game parlay that I think makes a lot of sense. Let's talk rushing props, because I think this is going to be some fun. There's a lot of names. Obviously, Miles Sanders is probably the biggest in terms of like expectation, but even then, like how there's so many mouths to feed in both of these backfields. Easily could be, we've seen Boston Scott, we've seen Gainwell, we've seen Miles Sanders, obviously Hurts runs. And then on the other side, we talked about McKinnon. We're a little worried about him. Pacheco's been great. And then CEH's return, we'll see how that plays out. But I think there is some potential here if you want to get cute and fade some of these guys that maybe everyone's on. There is some opportunities like McKinnon. You think McKinnon's hurt like we do, under 21.5 rushing yards feels like a nice bet. Especially for a guy that we expect to be more of a focus in the passing game, not in the running game.
He's had 5 total carries in the playoffs, by the way.
Yeah, 5 total carries. So even, for him to get 20 yards, like he could rip off a big one, sure. But the odds of that happening are pretty low.
Yeah.
So I like McKinnon quite a bit to the under. Pacheco is probably fine. I am betting the under on Kenneth Gainwell. I know people love
you're
him.
doing it again.
I like this number, but much better. Actually, no, DK has under 19.5 at -105. I know Gainwell's been fun, but like the 2 games where he's really shown up are the ones where the Eagles have just destroyed teams. They were rolling the Niners when he scored his big touchdown. They obviously kicking the shit out of the Giants. Like, I think this game's gonna be a lot more competitive. I think they're gonna lean on what they do well. And I think as much as Gainwell's been fun, he's been a nice little story the past couple weeks. I'm gonna take the under.
Yeah, man, it's so hard to think about that, because it's almost as if Philly was quite possibly saving Miles Sanders during these last 2 games for the playoffs, or they're just legitimately trying to split the carries up, probably sending Miles Sanders packing at the end of the year. But Gainwell is another guy. Like he's seen double-digit carries in both playoff games this far, but they've both been blowouts, by all accounts. So do we think that Philadelphia is going to run away with this game against the Chiefs?
And most of those carries have come late. And obviously,
exactly, highly doubtful.
If you believe that the Eagles are going to win and they're going to win going away, then play Gainwell overs, play Boston Scott overs, because that falls into the narrative that you've built for the game. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're like Brian and I, you think the Chiefs win, those things don't make sense. So same game parlays, I don't love them because I feel like you need a lot of things to happen for that to hit. But if you want to build some props out that you like and then throw it all together with the same game parlay, I think that makes sense. Because then if you hit a bunch of them, you have a really nice weekend. Brian and I talked a little bit about it, but if you like, we believe this Eagles rush defense is really strong. And they've shown the ability all season to be really good. Obviously, you can run on them if you want, but not necessarily going to happen. So McKinnon overs, unders, Pacheco unders, again, make a lot of sense if you want to fade it. I also really like Patrick Mahomes under 19.5 rushing yards. I think a rushing touchdown is in the cards, but I think Mahomes is going to be very selective when he runs. I think he will take opportunities when they're there. But I think him getting to 20 yards is very low. Obviously, you can see the juice. If you shop it, you might find a better number. I think the best number I found, I actually took it over at DK. It's 18.5, so a yard less, but it's only minus 110. So it's minus 118. So if you want another yard and you want to feel better about it, FanDuel's fine, but I would rather have minus 110 than minus 118. And just have him get maybe 14 yards rushing and a touchdown. And then I just cash all my bets. Any other rushing props you want to hit on?
Yeah, I think when you go to look at rushing attempts, I think that's a market where you could, again, if you're looking at a certain story of the game, for instance, like Jalen Hurts, you can tell the juice is towards the under of 10.5 here. And especially like for people like us, if we like Kansas City to win this game and limit the time of possession that Philadelphia actually has here, I think that I'm going to go with the under, thinking that Philadelphia is going to have to throw the ball a bit more than what they normally would, and or keep the running game focused on the running backs. So it's clear that obviously the sportsbook is leaning in that direction. Considering Hurts too, we don't know what his shoulder status is. I know just like Mahomes, he should be a little bit healthier, and you would think ideally they'd want the ball in his hands, but you cannot risk him taking another shot and re-aggravating that injury during the biggest game of their season and his life.
Yeah, no, I like that call. In terms of rushing attempts, I'm again gonna fade the Kenneth Gainwell train. It's 4.5 here, minus 122. You can shop it. I do like, we talked about maybe this game's a little closer. And if you think the game's competitive all down the stretch, and maybe it's within a field goal or even like one score game, Miles Sanders overs are kind of nice, especially if you think Gainwell and or Boston Scott aren't nearly going to be involved as much. Like we've seen in blowouts, they're happy to spread the work around, but when it's early in those games, it's a lot of Miles Sanders, and then obviously the game gets sideways and he kind of comes out. But if this game doesn't get sideways and he gets 15 or 16 rushes in a competitive game, that's a nice number. You're getting minus 108. If you shop it, you might even find a better number if you go to the FTN prop bet. I'll actually do that as we talk. But figuring out how you want figuring out how you want to attack this game. Let's see. So yeah, you can get BetMGM has 13.5 plus 100. Caesars has plus 100. So those are your two best spots, and then obviously FanDuel is minus 108, DraftKings minus 110 for 13.5. So there's opportunities if you really like Miles Sanders to get a few more carries.
It is interesting to note that he's gone under that total in 3 of the last 4 games, though. But that's also, again, you're looking at spots where they not only played a backup quarterback one of the games or 2 of the games with Jalen Hurts sitting out, or one of the games with Jalen Hurts sitting out, and then there was 2 absolute blowouts in the playoffs where he basically got throttled down. And
if you do the pace that he was on for those 2 games, he's going over this number.
Oh yeah,
because they pull him out of the game and let him rest because they know they have another game to play that's more important. They don't care. So another thing to think about. Once again, under carries on Jerick McKinnon, I think makes a lot of sense too.
Yeah.
You could do same game parlay under carries, under yards. CEH props haven't come out yet, but if you are like Brian and I, and you think CEH could be your guy, and maybe McKinnon's hurt or banged up a little bit, you could same game parlay unders with McKinnon, overs with CEH. And hope to get that. You want those things are a lot really correlated. So you want to think about that. Let's go to receiving yards, Brian. I think there's a few things we can jump into here. I have one player. I feel bad for picking on him. His name is Kenneth Gainwell, and he is going to go under 11.5 yards.
Man, you're just riding
I'm either going to be so right or so wrong. There's not going to be a middle ground. If the Eagles route, he's probably going over all of his numbers. I don't think that happens, so I'm going to make bets accordingly. Kelsey, 79.5 receiving yards. Feels a little aggressive, but I'm not going to touch it. AJ Brown, we talked a little bit before we started recording, but AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, I think, are both interesting. I'm happy to take unders on both of them, to be honest. Obviously, both guys are incredible playmakers. They could take these and go, 80 yards for a touchdown. There is like longest touchdown props, and I think the over under is like around 50 something. So if you want to bet these guys under and then use that as kind of a little bit of a hedge, so if it doesn't go, you hit that bet. That could be another way to do it. But I like both these guys to go under. I think AJ Brown's like 60 something yards. And then Devontae is, he could easily go over too, but I just feel like both the unders make a ton of sense, especially with, the Eagles offense. Like Hurts looked great, 2 weeks ago against the Giants, but so much of that was running. And then obviously last week, who knows, but didn't look great against the Niners, especially early. I think
one thing that keeps coming to mind for myself is a lot of times, like when we're comparing these matchups, like not only are we looking at what they did so far this playoffs, but we're looking at an overall total picture of what the season resembled. And when looking at Kansas City's defense, I mean, they started the year with multiple rookies in the defensive backfield. So obviously they struggled early, but this team has been playing a lot better of late. I mean, neither Jamar Chase or T. Higgins had absolute monster games in the AFC Championship game. Yes, T. Higgins had a beautiful high ball touchdown, which pat on the back to myself for calling that little same game parlay with him.
That was nice.
But like the Chiefs defense is playing a lot better than what the stats will show for their overall totals for the season. So it is hard to envision an Eagles passing game, which, yes, they are dangerous, but they are not at the level of what Cincinnati is in terms of going downfield, in my opinion. So the unders to me are very much in play for their outside guys, especially in AJ Brown. I know he's a good one-on-one guy, but Kansas City's pass defenders have been playing a lot better than what we saw early in the season, and they're getting healthier back there as well.
And if you don't have access to these sports books, things like Prize Picks and Underdog Pick'em exist.
Yeah, DFS.
And they can be fun ways to kind of attack it as well. I want to go to total receptions. I think there is some opportunity here. I don't love this juice. I'm seeing the juice that I found. Because I'm going under 7.5 receptions for Travis Kelce. I think he has a big game, but I think it's 6 or 7 catches. There's lots of 6.5s in the market, and you can get a better juice on that. But I am going with this. Where is he at? Yeah, well, it was mostly minus 135, but minus 138, not great. But I think I'd rather have 7.5, even if I have to lay a little bit more, than to take the 6.5. I like Kelce is so important to what they do, and I know they're going to use him a lot. I feel like 6 or 7 catches is kind of where he's gonna be, and then so that I want to be under, and I think that's the play.
The only thing I worry about with that is, like we saw last week, Mahomes just peppered Kelce early and often in that matchup. And like we said leading off the show, like Kansas City is going to devise a game plan where Kelce will be schemed open. It will not be like they're not going to be able to shut him down completely.
No, 100%. But like I was looking at his game log. Let's see if I can get this game log to work. So like he had 7 catches against Cincinnati, which is less than 7.5, which is why I'm going with it. Obviously had 14 against the Jaguars, but then had 6 against the Raiders, 7 against the Broncos, 6 against the Seahawks, went over on against the Texans. But like he went over since November, he's gone over 3 times out of 3, 6, 9, 12 games. So, a quarter of the time he's getting there, and 3/4 of the time he's not. So I know he's an amazing player. I know when the game matters most, Mahomes loves to look for him. But I think the Eagles are going to do everything in their power to make somebody else beat them. And he's still going to have his game and he's still going to be really good. But like, I'm thinking 6 for 65 or 70 and a touchdown, maybe 2. I'm also working under the premise that the Chiefs win this game and they're not going to run away with it, but it's going to be pretty comfortable. And I like the under. So, you know, maybe there's a little more running in the second half. He kind of quiets down. I don't know, but the 7.5 feels too much.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. It's especially like Philly, even if Kansas City does scheme up plays for Travis Kelce, I think this is a spot where everyone assumes that Kansas City won't be able to throw to the wide receivers. But Philadelphia played one of the easiest schedules in the NFL against opposing QBs. I mean, Daniel Jones had a fantastic season, but I mean, you're facing crap wide receivers on the outside there. You got Washington's complete disaster of a situation at quarterback. And the 2 games they played against the Cowboys, they did not look all that impressive. And now they're facing the best quarterback in the NFL, regardless of who he's throwing to. So I think that the wide receivers will play a bigger role than expected.
And then like McKinnon, once again, like under 3.5, it's a fine piece if you want to do a same game parlay. There is better 2.5 with better juice floating around, so you can kind of pick your poison.
Yeah, I'm really sad that there's no Sky Moore reception props here. Like,
yeah, if you want to get wild with it, like looking at some alternate receiving totals could be fun. Like you're thinking, oh, this is Devontae Smith's game, over 100 yards plus 410. Like I would much rather bet that than his over under. Same with AJ Brown, because I feel like if they have a monster game, they go bananas and, you know, absolutely destroy the totals. Like AJ Brown plus 260 to get 100 yards, plus 360. So maybe you're like, oh yeah, he's gonna have a monster game and go off. Same with Travis Kelce. Like you could get, 125 yards, 410. Like there's ways to do it if you really like said player.
Yeah, I wanted to go back real quick to the receiving yards. Kadarius Toney set at 26.5. Like he was probably well on his way to surpassing that for a 3rd time over the last 4 games prior to getting injured last week. So, I mean, if you think that he's going to be healthy for this game, or he's going to maybe possibly play longer than a quarter, to me, that's a good play to take the over there, because he had definitely carved out a larger role in the offense coming towards the latter part of the season. And without Mecole Hardman, I really do think that Toney should play a big role in this game if healthy.
I'm just playing with stuff. Like his alternate lines are insane. Like look at this. 50, you can get almost 10-1 on him to get 50 yards and a touchdown. So shop it, find value, look for ways to attack it. If you think Kadarius Toney has a big play where he can fall into the end zone, add on 50 yards, because that's how he's going to get there.
Yeah, and I do want to add, I did some shopping, and you can get Sky Moore receiving yards. I'm going to bet the over 10.5 over at PointsBet. It's plus 105.
That's nice. Let's see, can I go? I really appreciate FanDuel for being just like an awful site to use. Wish it was way cleaner. Their numbers are better, so that's why we're hammering them. Any other props you want to make sure we go through, Brian? Let's look at we talked touchdown scores, we talked rushing, receiving. I do have a few passing. I'm gonna go Mahomes under 38.5 pass attempts at plus 115. This is a guy, like, if you think the Eagles route, then probably taking the over is the play. But if you think it's competitive and or the Chiefs win, under is definitely the move. Like, you're getting plus money. You're expecting Mahomes, like, they're going to be obviously a lot more short passes in their new thing, but they still run Pacheco plenty. They'll find unique ways. And I think, like, I expect him to throw the ball like 35-ish times, which is a lot. But that's still going to be under. So I do want to throw that out.
Yeah, I like that call, especially like we talked about having Kansas City kind of keep the ball away from Philadelphia, which sounds kind of weird, but I do think that there's a good lean towards the under there. One of the other ones that I was talking to Kyle about prior to jumping on here, I like Frank Clark to get a sack this week. If you can find his sack prop, plus 150 over at Caesars, I believe it is. Frank Clark has a sack in 7 or what is it? It's all but one playoff game since joining Kansas City outside of last year's playoffs when he was kind of dealing with some injuries. Yeah. So I think Clark is a guy who he came out and said it. He's hungry this year. He's going all out. He's got 2.5 sacks already so far this year. A guy I work with over at BetSperts, he works for 4for4, Connor Allen. He came out with some statistics saying that Jalen Hurts takes a sack on over 20% of his adjusted sack rate is over 20% when under heavy pressure. Yep. So, I mean, he's a guy who, he's going to scramble, which oftentimes leads to sacks. And Frank Clark, of all the Kansas City pass rushers, is the guy that's most likely to get there, in my opinion. So I like him to get there, and all he needs is one.
Yep, I like that. I like Chris Jones. I even like Karlaftis, to be honest. I could see Hurts kind of stepping up a little bit in the pocket to get away from Clark or to get away from Jones, and Karlaftis just being there and getting a sack.
Yeah.
I also like Jake Elliott over 7.5 kicking points. Obviously, the Eagles are a team that love to go for it and are very aggressive. But this is a Super Bowl. I could see Sirianni being just a slightly more conservative.
Really?
Wanting to get points up. No, I'm not saying they're gonna punt on 4th and 1 on their own 35. But I could see a first drive, maybe get a field goal. Then all you need is one field goal and one PAT. If you think the Eagles roll, PATs feel great. I think there's so many opportunities. Over 7.5 feels nice at plus money. If it was if it was this number, I wouldn't it quite as much. But it's the combination of everything.
I do like that, but I also want to mention about Nick Sirianni real quick. I almost feel like he's dug himself into a hole that he can't get out of now. With him mean mugging the camera last weekend, he's almost in a spot where he has to go for it in 4th and short situations to maintain that aura about himself, or else people are going to call him a fake.
Well, see, Nick Sirianni is what people wanted Brandon Staley to be. Brandon Staley was this guy, and he got too much pushback, and then he turtled up and stopped making his calls. So I will give Sirianni credit for that. Obviously, winning as much as he has and getting all his Super Bowl helps. All right, Brian, we ran through the game. We ran through a lot of props. If you guys have your favorite prop, let us know down in the comments. If you want our feedback on some props, let us know down in the comments. We'll try and scoop back by on probably Friday and Saturday. Check the comments, give you any thoughts we have. And then obviously get ready for Super Bowl Sunday. We got all day. I will say I have 3 golfers that I've bet. And if you want to mix them in with some crazy weekend parlays in the Phoenix Waste Management Open, make sure you get those bets in. I guess today's Wednesday. So if you get this before the game, before tee off, Justin Thomas, Max Homa, Colin Morikawa, all 3 guys. If you throw a Chiefs money line, all of a sudden you're up 40-1, maybe a little over under action. Now you're looking at 80-1. So if you want to get real reckless this weekend and have some fun, some cross sport parlays, those are my guys. So Brian, we have 6 bets to make. You get 3, I get 3. I will let you go first, and we'll just kind of ping pong back and forth.
All right, so my first one, I mentioned it towards the back half of the show. I'm going to go with Sky Moore over 10.5 receiving yards over at PointsBet at plus 105, and I'm going to lay 2 units on that. It's not super confident, but I do think that he is in a good spot to potentially bust past this number easily.
I like it. Patrick Mahomes under 38.5 attempts, plus 115, going on the card. I'm going to do 3 units and see where it gets me.
All right. For my next one, this is an annual bet of mine, and this year I feel as confident as ever. Over 2.5 players to have a pass attempt during the game at plus 150. I believe I got this over at DK. I'm going to go 4 units on this. We saw this last year We saw it a couple of years ago when New England played, I think it was Philadelphia. So there's a large gap in between, but in terms of offensive originality, these are two teams that I think have the head coaches and the offensive coordinators that are going to pull out all the stops. And I think this hits possibly in the first half.
Kenneth Gainwell, under 11.5 receiving yards. I know all the talk, but this guy is not going to be as involved as he was the past weeks. So receiving yards is going on. I will do another 3 units there.
And for my last one, this is my game pick as well. I'm Chiefs money line plus 105 right now. I actually have an outright on them. I believe it's like plus 150 from earlier when the line got up to like 3 or 2.5. I'm going 4 units on this. I love it. I cannot bet against Patrick Mahomes. This dude is incredible. He's going to be healthier. Maybe not 100%, but I'm not betting against Andy Reid with almost 2 weeks of preparation and Patrick Mahomes led Chiefs.
I love it. I love it. I am going to, because I had a good season and I feel really cocky, Kadarius Toney anytime touchdown plus 370.
Woo! I love it.
Going on the card. I'm only going to put 2. Let's go 2 units on there. Actually, you know what? I'm going to go plus 370.
Come on, you got some leeway.
Put 2 units there, and then I'm going to put 4 units on Gainwell and 4 units on Mahomes. So that gets me up to a total of 10. So that is where we at. For my final betting card, Patrick Mahomes, under 38.5 passing attempts. You can get plus money on that. Kenneth Gainwell, under 11.5 receiving yards. That's minus 110 pretty much everywhere. Shop it. And Kadarius Toney, anytime touchdown, plus 370.
For my card, Sky Moore over 10.5 receiving yards at plus 105, going 2 units there. Over 2.5 players to attempt to pass during Super Bowl 57 at plus 150, laying 4 units on that one. And I am backing the Chiefs money line at plus 105. I'd take it even at minus 110 if it got to that point at 4 units.
Yeah. I love it. Didn't put a game pick on the official card, but Chiefs and under are my picks for the game and the total. That is Brian Twining. I am Kyle Robert. It's been a fun ride. Appreciate everybody who's hung around for the Quick Six all season long. NASCAR is here next week. We are at the Daytona. Appreciate everybody who's already jumping back on board. If you want our NASCAR content, that is in the feed. I will link it also below. Daytona previews start next week, and then we are off and running. Brian and I will be in Vegas. We'll be at the Vegas race. It's all happening. Brian Twining. We got hockey, we got golf, we got NASCAR, and obviously
March is coming.
March Madness is around the corner. We got Augusta. It's one of my favorite times of the year. I can't control myself. Enjoy the Super Bowl, hit some winners, and we'll talk to you guys next time.